Picture being a kid who feels different, overlooked, or unsure of where you belong, and then opening a book that says, "You're not alone." Today's guest has spent her career writing those kinds of books, lyrical, powerful, and deeply human stories that let readers of all ages feel seen. She's the author of Brown Girl Dreaming, Feathers, After Tupac and D Foster, Show Way, and Miracle Boys. Her memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming, won the National Book Award, a Newbery Honor, and the Coretta Scott King Award, and her picture book, The Day You Begin, became a #1 New York Times bestseller and a classroom staple for its message of courage and connection. From Young People's Poet Laureate to National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, her voice has been celebrated and censored, but always undeniable. Please welcome Jacqueline Woodson. Brown Girl Dreaming has earned incredible honors from the National Book Award to a Newbery Honor, and it's touched readers across generations. Yet, like many powerful books, it's also been challenged. How do you interpret these attempts to censor your work, and what do they reveal about today's climate around literature and education?
Oh, that's such a great question, Chris. I interpret it as an attempt at erasure of American history. The reason that Brown Girl Dreaming is being challenged and censored is because I talk about the civil rights movement and what the powers that currently be don't want any depictions of America as a place that is not perfect for basically white folks to exist. So they're censoring books about enslavement, they're censoring books about immigration, they're censoring books about the civil rights movement. Anything that is telling the story of America from other than a white, pretty much Anglo-Saxon perspective is being censored. And I think what we know and what this continues to show us is the power of narrative and the power of books in young people's lives in ways that help them understand the bigger world and, as you said earlier, see themselves inside of it and see their power and also to find their path. And so because these books are those kind of pathways, there are people who are scared of them. There are people who embrace them, of course, and know anyone who wants our young people to be smarter than we were embraces literature. Anyone who is um, is afraid of that information does not.
In your TED Talk, you spoke beautifully about the value of reading slowly. In a world where attention spans are shrinking, how can adults help young people rediscover the joy of slow, meaningful reading?
Yeah, I think it's really important to read slowly. First of all, it takes us a long time to write these books, so we don't want people racing through them. And also, it's important to read as an engaged reader. And a lot of times, young people mimic what they see in their elders and their caregivers. So, if they see their caregivers reading books slowly and really thinking about them and talking about them and deconstructing them, then they will do the same. I think in schools a lot we're pushed to read lots of books and to read them quickly and to keep up and I think that's sad because you're not reading as a writer. One thing reading slowly teaches you is how to tell a story. You know, when you're reading as an engaged reader, you're seeing how the author's doing dialogue, how they're doing setting, how they're creating character. And when you get through a book really quickly, that doesn't happen. So I encourage adults to read to young people, to read out loud to young people. I encourage them to get library cards for their young people and to use the library um, and to just make books a natural part of their everyday lives. You know, I think it's important for teachers to really think about how they're engaging with reading with and reading with their students. You know, are they pushing them to read above their reading level? Are they really allowing them to take their time with the text, or are they immediately testing them on some part and making the process of reading more of a stressful one than one that's engaged and interesting?
As a kid, you told stories, even made up ones just to be heard. How did that early desire to be listened shape your voice as a writer?
I think I love the attention from afar of telling lies slash stories. I love that something could grow in my head and people would believe it. And I love that it was something that I was, seen for. So the fact that people said I was a good storyteller or said that, oh, you should be a writer, really made me feel like I had a gift that I was bringing to the narrative, literally to the conversation, to the world. And just, like any kid, you want to be seen in a positive light. You want people to know you're there and you don't want to be silenced. So I think it was really good for me to be such an outspoken writer at the time, storyteller. And it was nice that there were teachers, there were adults who recognized my dream.
Some parents worry about their kids reading books with heavy themes. What would you say to those who are unsure if your books are too much? And how can literature help open conversations instead of shutting them down?
It's important that any kid coming to a book is able to see the hope inside the narrative, no matter how devastating the story is. And as a writer, that's where I start. Where is the hope in this story? I don't think of my books as having heavy things. I think of them as being realistic fiction. I think young people get heavier stuff that's uncensored and without hope through social media, through, anyone walking through this world right now is going to see all the ways in which the devastations are constantly coming at us. And I think one thing literature allows us to do is to turn off that and pivot to a world where the imagination can be met with something that it is expansive as opposed to reductive. I think all the information coming through social media can feel very reductive and make young readers feel really powerless. And because it's nonstop, um, then it's even more disempowering. I also think that kids are so smart and so perceptive that they're picking up the world and they're looking for ways to understand it. And good books can help them navigate, negotiate, understand the world. So I don't think we're protecting young people from anything when we say you can't read that book because it talks about a grandmother dying, or you can't read that book because it talks about the civil rights movement, or you can't read that book because it talks about two teenagers falling in love. Like all of that is already somewhere in their psyche, and the role of the author is to do it respectfully and thoughtfully and be in conversation with someone of that age in a way that doesn't feel a didactic or be dangerous.
If you had to sit next to one of these parents that are the ones banning your books, what would you tell them?
Well, first I would ask them, have they read the book? Because a lot of people challenging and banning books have not. And then I would want to have a conversation with them about what part of the book made them feel uncomfortable, afraid, and just begin there. I'm always eager to talk to people about their ideas and to talk across those lines of beliefs and race and gender and economics and all the way. This is what I do in my book, so I'm always happy to have those conversations. But I'd start with what did you love about the book, and what made you uncomfortable?
Was there a childhood book or author that made you feel seen or made you want to become a writer?
There were so many. I loved the first book was a book called by John Steptoe called Stevie, where it was the first time I saw people who looked like me and who spoke like me, who lived in what looked like Brooklyn. And then it was Mildred Taylor's Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which was the first book where Cassie Logan, the main character, was like me, and that she moved to New York from she didn't move. I had moved from New York to New York from South Carolina. And here was someone still in the South. She was like my age. She had brothers. And there were so many mirrors. I talk a lot about how Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, who's an academic, talked about the importance of kids having both mirrors and windows in their books. Mirrors so that they could see reflections of themselves in the literature, windows so that they can experience other worlds. And I feel like Mildred Taylor was one of my first windows. And then, of course, James Baldwin and Toni Morrison and Langston Hughes and Nikki Giovanni and all of those people were people where I was able to see parts of myself and believe that I could be a writer.
Who would you say is the most impactful?
Of all the writers that I've read,
Yeah.
I don't, I think I can't narrow it down to one because there are parts I learned from every single one, and all of those parts as a whole made me Jacqueline Woodson. So I think I would be remiss to say that person because it wasn't only them.
As we wrap up, Jacqueline Woodson reminds us that storytelling isn't just about what's written on the page. It's about who gets to be seen, who gets to be remembered, and who finally feels like they belong. From Brown Girl Dreaming to The Day You Begin, her work doesn't just echo the world, it dares to reshape it with tenderness, clarity, and quiet courage. Thank you, Jacqueline, for giving voice to the silence, for making space on the shelf for every kind of reader, and for showing us the words can open doors, build bridges, and start revolutions all at once.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thanks for your great questions. It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you for your great answers.
Thanks. Take
See you.
care. Keep me
Yeah, take
posted.
care.
Bye.